Belgian Civitas Maxima, what it says is Gent is the most important and biggest city in Belgium or this region, the north of France. So at this point, this is 1534. This is the end of the Middle Ages, and Gent is a really huge city for the time being. At that point, it had about 60,000 inhabitants. Now you think that's not so big, and you are absolutely right. But for that time in the Middle Ages in Europe, it was really, really big. And the only city that was bigger than Gent at that time in our region was Paris. So London, but also Amsterdam, Keulen, they were Brussels, Antwerp, they were really, really small compared to what Gent was. And what you see here is what Gent was. It was a city that was completely walled in. And what you see here, you see it here, you see one here, you see one here, you see one there, you see them all around. These are the gates of Gent. And now if you live near Dampoort, Brugse Poort, Muidenpoort, Keizerpoort, the poort part means gates. And these were all the gates to the city. And you have to just imagine that if you pass through something today that's called port, like the Dampoort, you're actually moving from what's not the city, absolutely not, from like the outside through the gates of Gent and then entering into the city. And what you can see is that it's quite a large city. You can see that from this view. But you can also see that there is a big difference between the insides and the outsides. And what you have here, these little white stripes, is something very, very special. Does anyone know what it is? Nee, het is geen water. Het water is dit hier. Wat? What do you think it is? No? That? The white stripes here. You don't see the white stripes? Now you see them? What do you think it is? Een boerderij? No. It was actually linen. What linen? This is a cloth. So it was the textile which they made the clothes and the textile, etc. from. And what you see here is that what I explained earlier, they made it from wool. And the wool they got from England because it was the best wool in the world. And they were always trying to make the cloth in Gent and the textile in Gent more valuable. It wasn't such a big market at that point. Today textile is a huge market. But at that point textile wasn't such a big market, but it was really expensive. Because normal people could not afford to have really, really nice clothes. And especially, that's what I said earlier, the colors. And what you see here is that they are bleaching. They're bleaching the cloth there by putting it out in the sun so that it becomes completely white and can absorb color. And now this is the thing. The thing that made the difference for Gent is that they really used a wonderful process to color it so that it could have magnificent colors like blue, like red, like gold, and like black. Now look at us today. We are all here dressed in black and blue and red and whatever color you like. But this was really something, if we were here running around in the Middle Ages in Europe, everybody would think we are kings and queens. Because normal people would not be able to afford color. And people in Gent were able to afford color, and because of that they had status. Everyone looked up to them because they could afford color. And now the most expensive colors were these. Red, Parmesan red, that was a deep, deep royal red, and then, and royal blue, Koningsblauw. And the royal blue is interesting actually, because they used to make the blue, where did they get the blue from? The red was usually from crabs, but also they got it from the Silk routes, that of course traces all the way back to China. And at one point they discovered they were making blue from a local herb. It's called veal. It's not very well known. And at one point they discovered that indigo was much better. But of course there's no indigo here. So they also, as soon as they discovered it in 1500, they discovered indigo is a much, much better and much more beautiful. the way of blue, they started importing that so that they could, Ghent could become like a specialty of Ghent, like this royal blue. Let me show you that one. Another very specific thing here. Look at this. This is a mevrouw. Yeah. Now what does mevrouw? What's this lady doing? yeah. She's petting a lion.
She's fighting a lion.
No, she's not fighting a lion. What's she doing?
She's eating the lion.
This is one of the most valuable pieces. Of course, that's really a top piece. This is a really nice story to it as well. It's a triangular flag. Now today I read that Nepal is the only country in the world that has a triangular flag.
That's right.
The triangular flags were very, very common in the Middle Ages in Europe, and this is the only one that we actually have kept. And it's really by accident, as all good things are, of course. It was lost for a very long time. Nobody thought they had it. And it was lost they just put it between some boxes, and at one point they were cleaning out something and they discovered this flag that dates back to the 1500s. So it's really old. Not only that, it's also one of the only artworks that we have of medieval women. Because the art guild, so the making art, was actually something that was mostly done by men during the Middle Ages, but this was made by Agnes van den Bosse, that was her name. And so what you see is the flag of Ghent, representing Ghent. Now what you have here, this girl here, it's a woman. Yeah, what's she doing?
She's petting the lion.
She's petting the lion. And this girl here is the Virgin of Ghent, the Maagd van Gent. It's also a beer, it's also a cafe, you might have heard of it. The Virgin of Ghent, which means actually what it represents, the symbol of this girl, is that this is the walled-in city. It's walled in, it has gates, you cannot enter her. She is completely clean, she is pietous, and she will defend her property, her court. This is her court. This is the grass that you see here. But what is she doing? She is petting a lion. She's stroking the lion. Why is she doing that? Om bier te maken? Yeah, could be. No, that's not it. This lion. It's not a cat, no. It's the Count of Flanders. Because of course we have a Count's castle. You remember, you know all about the Count's castle, of course. But Ghent, this is Ghent. And this is the Counts of Flanders. And now today you would say that Ghent is a part of Flanders. But in the Middle Ages, people in Ghent would think differently. They would say that the Counts of Flanders are guests in Ghent. And they should behave. They should be good, and they really should not speak out of turn and should abide by the rules of Ghent. Because Ghent was, as I showed you, it was the biggest city of the region, it was the richest city of the region, and it really knew that they were really in charge. And that the guests, the Counts of Flanders, should really behave. That's why she is petting the lion. But the lion is also quite dangerous. And that's something we learned a little bit later, that the lion became bigger and bigger, actually because these Counts of Flanders, they really had no special qualities, let's put it that way, but they were good in really one thing. Can you imagine what it was? Not war, but that would be a good option. What do you... Bier maken? No, not that one either. Marrying. They were really, really good at marrying other rich people. Because of that, they became even richer. And so they were attached to all other zones in Europe because of marriage. And that's why this lion became even more and more big. And Ghent stayed this walled-in city, this closed city, until this lion became so big that they couldn't really defend themselves against it anymore. It's a beautiful picture, right?
This is a carpet.
And look at her beautiful clothes. It's not a carpet, but it's a flag. And look at her beautiful clothes, again showing off what kind of clothes Ghent could make, what kind of specialty brands they had in Gent. Let's move forward. They were punished, and then Gent lost all its power, lost all its immunity, and that's what you see here is Gent trying to recover from that. This is in a time where you're actually here. This is the imperial colonial time. This is when Britain, also France, but mostly Britain, of course, is invading the whole world, is making colonies, is building up an empire. All countries in Europe are doing that at the same time. They are stealing away a lot of things, obviously. And Gent is not, or Belgium is not doing anything. It tries to keep on what it's doing. And it's not working. And because of that, a lot of people flee out of Gent. A lot of refugees go to the Netherlands, go to England, go to France. And what you're seeing here is actually that Gent, you see that Gent is becoming one small city in a lot of cities, like Brussels, like Antwerp, Bruges, and Lille. And what you see there, the big outskirts there, that's the outside of the city. The mills there, you see them? That's Eckenkamp, if you know it. And the picture there on the left, that's the Brugsevaart. So for those of you from Arnhem or area, that's the Brugsevaart that you see there, which they are digging. Do you know where it is? Brugsevaart? It's near the Brugse Fort. It goes all the way to Mariakerke and to Eden. And that's them digging that. Just to try to be a part of all those cities together. But apparently it's not really working because they have lost their power. And because of that, actually, yeah, a lot of the buildings are still intact because we have no money to rebuild them or to make them new. So that's actually good. But yeah, it must not have been fun at that point. Let's move forward to the last slide. it perfect? Right, I told you we would take a really quick trip. I told you we would take a really quick trip down the time. And you know, we've been traveling like in 100 years of speed. So we came from the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages, the start of Ghent, traveling all the way to the Middle Ages, and then traveling through the 17th, 18th century. And now we are here in this room that is actually about the 2 centuries, the 19th and the 20th. And so I told you that Ghent was struggling, not having a real power, but that changed completely in the beginning of the 19th century. You can see it there, and I think that you all know it because it's so visible still today in Ghent, and that is because of industry. Ghent became an industrial city in the beginning of the 19th century, with all factories, cotton factories that were built, Rabot, Brugsepoort, Muiden, Dampoort, Leeuwenberg, everywhere around Ghent, where the gates used to be, we have those huge textile factories that are being built, and that brings a lot of things to Ghent. It brings a lot of trouble, it brings a lot of politics, it brings a lot of interest. And what you see here is actually a little bit of a mishmash, because we are still looking for some answers, and we're still, you know, it's not just a story, it's so many different stories. And when you look at this wall, you can see all kinds of fragments of this history. For example, we have a socialist movement coming to the front, because of course there's so much poverty in Ghent. We also have the university, because of course these factories, they need new techniques, they need new inventions. So we have a big university that's coming up. Because of these factories, there's also this question, how about the air we breathe? These factories are really polluting. At one point we can't breathe, so what are we going to do? And it also brings a lot of questions about politics, etc. And that's actually what you see here. But my main focus, I have to show you here, because this is the only thing that we can really show for it. What you see, what the industry or the or factories or work also does is, of course, that it attracts a lot of people to come to work here. When Ghent starts to become a big city, of course there are many more and more people who are coming here. And at first they are coming from nearby, from small villages, moving to the city. And then from the Netherlands, moving to Ghent. And from France, and from Spain, and from Turkey, and from Morocco. And then also always from further away. And this is migration history. It's very hard to get and this migration history is really hard to show in a museum, because of course there has been migration all through everything that I've been showing you. From the beginning until today, there's always been migration, and migration is so important to a city. I always say that when speaking to students as well, there is no city without migration, and the city needs migration to change constantly and to renew. But how are we going to show that? How are we going to explain that? And there is just one thing that we have here, because it's really special. Wait, now there is too much sound. And then this, can anyone recognize what it is? Cassettes, yeah, it's cassettes. I'm so happy that you still recognize that, because yeah. I don't think that you ever listened to a cassette, or have you? This cassette was actually, it's Turkish music cassettes, which the Turkish community, of course, you know, is really big in Ghent. But they came here from the 60s on, and they had now today, of course, you have phones, we can contact, we can speak to our parents, whichever country in the world they are living in. But those communities did not. And so what they had was this music cassettes. And so they sometimes they recorded the voice of like their mother or their father or their sister, they recorded their voice in Turkey and they sent them here. There were no phones, they couldn't read or write, and so the cassettes to many people of the Turkish community is very valuable because it's so personal, and they disguise them as like music cassettes with this music from the homeland. And this is the only thing that we have now in this museum that is attached to this kind of migration. And so the question that I am working on mostly is, how can we show how important migration is to a city, and by you know, having an object or a story that we can show and explain to people. This is really important, and migration is not new. It's always been here, and it's a very normal human thing. And to show how important it is, it's really difficult. So that's my work actually. That's what I'm trying to find. Let's go outside.
Mali ride dari cassette tapes.
Good.
Okay, this is the room that is very, very personal to me, because this is the room that is specifically about my project. And so I told you in the last room that we were in that we've been looking for this answer. Like, we know migration is so important. There's so much research about it in the history. We have no way of showing it to people and explaining to people why it is so important, how it is important. I've been looking for this answer all, I would say maybe for the past 20 years or something. Still haven't found it, but still looking for it, and I hope looking for everyone who can help me with it. And so I'm really grateful to Sanju for always giving me ideas about that as well. And the last couple of years, since 2018, we've been doing specifically this project to look more into how can we get an answer to that? How can we explain all these different layers into the history again? And this is called the square kilometer, and this room is specifically about Rabot. But come closer and you will see it. That Thijs and me are doing, and this is the square kilometer. The idea is very simple. It's every square tile of that floor that we just saw upstairs. We will look at it really, really closely. And together with people who are working there, who are thinking about history and thinking about the future also, we want to ask, so what do we want to show? What do we need to show? Not just migration, but also everything else that has no place in this museum or has no place in books, or that we have forgotten. What do we need to remember? What do we need to show? What do we need to look for? And this is the project that Sanju has worked on so intensively, and again, thank you so much for that, is looking at this specific area. You have the Wondelgemstraat, you have the Sint Joseph Church, you have the Beggenage, the Begijnhof here, then you have the Palace of Justice. These are the Gasmeters, the Gasmeterlaan. And then if you want to go to Wondelgem, that's all this way here. And what we are doing is actually taking a microscope, as to say, and really looking for all these houses, all these streets. What is it hiding? What history is not showing? What people are not bringing their history to this museum because they don't think it's about them, or they don't think it's their place. And this is really what we've been trying to do. And so I've been traveling around Gent. I've been staying in Rabot for a couple of months, working specifically on that area.
on Ledenberg, that specific area, the Blursepoort, and now I'm going to the Dampoort, to that area, and always trying to dig up new stories, stories that haven't been told, stories that need to be told, and we cannot forget, or we really want our children to know, and our grandchildren, and the next generations, that they should really keep, and that might inspire them to do something else or to do something new. That's the whole idea. So what we did in Rabot is we stayed there in 2020, and then we made this route to show you just a little bit of some ideas that we think, well, that's something that I think most people would not know, and that most museums maybe have no place for. And we try to create a place here, it's just temporary, and then we move further to the next area. So the photo that you saw when you came in, what you have here is the 3 little towers of Rabot. And that's such a beautiful picture, because the 3 little towers, if you ask anyone in Gent, Rabot, they will tell you, oh, those 3 little towers. Like that's all of it. Look at, if you look from above, you can see it's actually here. It's actually here. It's so small. All the rest doesn't matter, all the rest matters. This is just one small building. It's not everything there is to say about Rabot. So let's look at some other things. And there are 4 stories here. I will let you discover them for yourself, but just to give you an idea, there are 4 stories that we explored specifically. One is very close to Simon, of course, the Wandelhemstraat. I think that most of you know this street, but I don't know how long you've known it, of course. I don't know how long you've known it, but the Wandelhemstraat is about 100 years old. And of course now you know that it's a street with a lot of shops, a lot of different shops. If you want to find anything, you will go to the Wandelhemstraat, because it's such a busy street that has so many different things. But some of you might know that not so long ago, about 20 years ago, there was actually not so much there. It was just, what? You weren't born, so you can, but other people might know. 20 years ago, a lot of the houses were completely empty. There were no stores, and all there was Turkish butchers. And also gambling, Turkish gambling and Turkish butchers. But that was it. So we started in the Wandelhemstraat. So we started looking at each house. I went through each house to look in the sources until 1891. So that's 140 years or 130 years ago. And for every 10 years, I looked at what was the building being used for, to know what is really going on in the Wandelhemstraat. What's the real story behind this street? Yeah, you can check it out. And you have all these different things. And then we have some of these. Then we get at some of these stories here. Why is the Wandelhemstraat so successful now, and why wasn't it before? And why was it successful in the 1960s, but not before that? And it has to do with who buys there. So you have the neighborhood who buys there, but there's always been a lot of passage also, and then specific shoppers. Today you have a lot of specific shoppers who will come to the Wandelhemstraat because there are things there you cannot find anywhere else. And this was not the case about 20 years ago. Okay, just the last things I want to show you. Yeah, it's okay. So you might know. Okay, I'll just replace it. The question here was what we discovered is there are 14 religious places in Rabot, meaning there are, again I have to check, 5 mosques, 8 churches and 1 temple, a Buddhist temple. That is in Rabot. It changed while I was there, so it's difficult. But then the question is, of course, why are there 14 religious places in 1 square kilometer? That's really, you cannot find it anywhere else in Gent. You will maybe find a mosque or 2 and a church or 2, but 14 religious places in 1 area, that's really a lot. And so this is what we looked into for this. And on this stream here, we were looking for women specifically, because there's a lot of history is written specifically about men, and the women are kind of like invisible. So we went to look specifically for women who might have a story of their own, and we found women with a story there. And then the last part here, oh yeah, this is nice, right? You can just look up your streets, and it will show the history of that street on the computer. But now that you explained probably already, there's a big project in the university where they are making this accessible. They try to make it accessible online so that you can Google your own story. You can look for your own street. You will have they will show you what it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, etc. And then there's just this one more thing.
Dan nog wel wat dus
Those of you who know Rabot probably know this. This is the street, the Gebroeders Smetstraat. So this is, I think your house is maybe here? Yeah, it's here, probably here. Sandy Raju's house is here, I think. But there is a big park there. It's called the El Paso Park. But, and now it looks like a place that you wouldn't really think of as a historical place. But it's like an open air museum. What it was actually a graveyard. This was a graveyard in the 18th century outside of Gent, which they changed, which they had a school here, and then this whole thing with the white here, this was the graveyard. But at one point they decided that it's not a good idea to have all these dead bodies here in the middle of the city. You have to put them outside of the city, and they changed this into here there were some buildings, but for people who had no houses, so for homeless people actually. And then the other part they made into a park. That's the park that is still the park. The kids are playing there. But at one point they decided to have a swimming pool in the park. And so the consequence of this it still exists today. It's like an open area where you have now a mosque, and you also have like playground, etc. Is that until the 1990s, kids who dug a little too deep there ended up with skulls in their hands, because it used to be a graveyard. So this is, it's interesting if you think about your home or your environment as being something that existed for 2,000 years, and if you dig deep enough, then you know it shows that there is history there in the ground as well. So the last thing is that what we always try to make is we have some plans that we made, but we also have these postcards with just some fragments of the history of Rabot. We also made them for Support and also for the Berg, but we haven't made them for the other places. And they're all just fragments from the history of Rabot, from the things that we have pictures from. And you can take any of these you like. It's free. For example, this shows the Turkish families who just arrived in the 1960s, and it's the mothers making blankets for the brides. Here is this picture. So please look around, take whatever picture you have, and then we are going to get some.
So before we go, Tina, we all stand there.
Yeah.
In the two rows here, and then we make a pose like this.
Yeah.
And we take a picture.
It's a smart idea.
Yeah.
Nobody to miss. Yeah, nice. It's really interesting and educational visiting.
Picture of rain.
Bro. तपाईँहरूको आउँछ नि
राम्रो छ जेल छैन सिलिक्टर कला देखाउँछ
हजुर
मेरो फेभरेट स्पोर्ट
ल अर्को ल्याउनुपर्छ पनि छ
कानमा सुन्नु छ भन्दै कानमा सुन्नु छ क्या
म्युजिक आइरहेछ स्पिकर छ स्पिकर
It's
दुकान अब आउँछ होला तपाईँले होइन अब आउने होला
खोइ कति लाउँछ त्यसो अलिकति झिलिक्क देखाएको
म्युजिक म्युजिक ज्यादा
ल
कसो बस्छ कसो
बसेको
पुरानो नयाँ मिक्स गरेर चाहिँ भिडियो खास गरेर हेर्नु मैले है हेर्नु भएको थियो पहिले तपाईँले पहिले हेर्नु भएको थियो तपाईँले हेर्नु भएको
चेल्सीको घरको गेट
त्यो लामो भएको थियो तुर्किस कल्चरको बारेमा मान्छे छ है
Okay, picture time.
Wait, aku mau hamil, aku dulu. Laksana. Ini aja. Saya nak apa sih? Punya tu, lihat apa punya kau?
Ah, yes, this is good. This is going to happen something. Jerry, okay. Sini lumpia, spring roll.
म यो यसरी बरु देश बेस हो है
तिमीले घुमाइदिनु भयो नि तपाईँले
हजुर त्यसमा
Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola. काट्छ त्यो राख्छ यहाँनिर राखेर काट्न लगाएको हुन्छ सबैले देख्थ्यो नि यहीँ बोलाएर उबाएर काट्न लाग्थ्यो होइन सबभन्दा बेस्ट यहाँ सबै उभिन पनि सजिलो हुन्छ होइन तर म त अलिकति थाहा नि उता उता साइडमा बस्छु केयर गर्न पाएँ सबैले के कसो होइन त समातो त्यो बोतल होइन त्यहाँ बस्दा त अप्ठ्यारो भयो नि सबजना अब उता सबजना छरी आउँछ कसरी हेर्नु मिल्दैन नि यहाँ उभिएर काट्न लगाऊ कि यहाँ भने तपाईँले यहाँ राख्नु बसेन ल क्या हो त्यसो नाम चाहिँ ल ल ल
फेरि उता बारे
पहिले बोलेर के बोल्न भाइ सबैलाई थाहा छ नि होइन 9 नै हो भने भान्चे पनि थाहा भइहाल्छ नि 9 नै भनेर त्यसपछि भइहाल्यो नि निकालेर चाहिँ जोड्यो भने एकछिनको लागि त्यो फर्स्ट आगो फेत्त अहिले छिटो 1 2 3 ल ल भन्नु ल तिमी पहिला सुरु गर बन्द Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Sandra. Happy birthday to you. Hip hip. Hip hip. Look at push kar cut pehle. Fugar. Laan fugar. Nepal. Wow, tali.
Je bent toch groot, man? Wat? Ik wil kijken wat er binnen zit. Mama, helemaal laat je bitrot haar.
Ke bitrot haar? Is er rice होला rice? नेपालीहरुको त rice हुन्छ नि. Rice होला होला के बित्रot? Lovely, it's lovely. Babala.
Jyoti, help कर देंगे? Help कर देना.
ल. बाबालाई अलिकति बेला मुखमा. तपाईले खादिन अलिकति. भयो. तपाईले. ल. कति वर्ष भयो? 9 वर्ष भयो अब.
लगे करना होता है उसी के ताकि सब मजा आए.
उसले त छम्की बन्चुरी लाने आने जाम. यत्रो सबै पुग्ने हो त.
सकुना काट्दैन अनि कसै काट्नु त.
यहाँ माथिसम्म पुग्ने होला न यसरी ड्याममै.
समीरा म त मुस्कान भन्छु.
तिम्रो पनि बर्थडे यस्तै गर्ने यस्तो ठाउँ. तिम्रो पनि बर्थडे यस्तो गर्ने. तिमी बर्थडे गर्ने. त्यसले निकाल्नु पर्दा काट्नु त यसले नै हो नि.
यो सबको भागमा
यो met dit een muur maken. Nee, kijk, die, je ogen zijn allemaal letterlijk.
Stap is vies.
Zotte.
Wow. Je lacht zo en zo.
Dan gaan we weer wat daar liggen.
Ik heb een walrus hier. Ik moest later best veel overgeven. Dus dat we maken.
चम्ची राख्न पाए हुन्छ है यहाँ. उसको प्लेट
मेरोबाट भिडियो हेरेको छु तर फोटो भइहाल्छ नि है. फोटो यताबाट भिडियो युरो नेपालमा. काम सकेको म अन्त फोटो आएर पिट गर्दा म त गएको जाउँ न मलाई हो यस्तो भन्नु त मलाई चाहिन्छ ल ल ल एक्सन भन्नुमा खिचिहाल्छ ल ल ल खानु होइन यसो गर उसमा ब्यागमा हजुर हराउँछ सबै ब्यागमा छ बस सबै त्यो पैसा पनि ब्यागमा राखेको के पछि अलिपछि आज तिमीले यतिकै राख्नुपर्छ आज तिमी यतिकै सुत्ने है सुत्दाखेरि है आज तिम्रो बर्थडे हो नि त आउँछ नि होइन आज त हामीले माने त हाम्रो लागि पनि सुत्नु पर्दैन त्यतिकै कसरी खिच्नु हुँदैन कसरी होइन
Maybe now is the time. Just my colleague and me would like to ask you some questions about how you liked it, what you thought. And as I explained, we are on a mission to know more about how we can really show other things in the museum. So we are just going to come around to the tables and ask you some questions. Tell us that we can ask as well. It's just 3 questions actually that we just wanted to ask you. But before that, I really wanted to thank Sanju because she helped us so much with our research. Sanju, really thank you so much for organizing this, but also for helping us constantly challenging ourselves to think about history. So thank you very much. Maybe you will join me in an applause for Sanju.
Yeah.
Give us a tour of the museum. So,
my pleasure.